Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Truth Wanted, the weekly live call-in show where we talk to you about the truth and how to find it. I'm your host, MD Aware, and joining me this week is the man, the myth, the legend, Student Dr. Ben. Welcome, Student Dr. Ben.
Hi, it's great to be here. My first time on Truth Wanted, believe it or not, is with you.
Really? Oh, what an honor. All right, everyone. If you want to talk to us live on air about what you believe and why, give us a call at 1-512-991-9242 or through your computer at tiny.cc/calltw. Call now to make sure that you get time on the air. For anyone listening or watching in the future, you can catch Truth Wanted live on YouTube every Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Hope to see you there next week. Truth Wanted is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of positive atheist culture and the separation of religion and government. I'd like to kick things off, Student Dr. Ben, with a discussion with you, my guest. And I guess the first place to start is for you to tell us who you are and introduce yourself to people who watch our show who may not know you.
Yeah, I'm Student Dr. Ben. I'm one of the hosts over at Talk Heathen. So you saw the thing at the beginning telling you to go watch Talk Heathen, and you should on Sundays. And I talk a lot about medicine and trans issues, and I think that's why we're on together, is so that we can get some extra talk about medicine today.
Yeah, totally. And you have your own stuff going on aside from this show. What's your regular scheduled programming?
Yeah, so other than Talk Heathen, you can find me. I do a show, Medical Myths, on Saturdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, where I debunk bad medical claims. So we talk about things like crystal healing. I've talked about naturopathy. I've talked about why not to drink your own pee to cure COVID. You know, lots of fun topics over there.
And what's your favorite? What's your favorite pseudoscientific, medical, whatever to talk about?
You know, the urine drinking was an interesting one. I think, as unfortunate as this one is, it's always entertaining to go into those Facebook groups and find out the different ways people are curing cancer. There's one I saw, a cancer cocktail that had apple cider vinegar and baking soda together, because we know that we like to mix our acids and our bases together, and also a lot of cannabis of different varieties. So that was an interesting little thing.
Classic cancer cures, right? The apple cider vinegar, that's a classic.
Yeah.
And the anything marijuana related, right? Or other illegal drug related seems to be a secret cancer cure.
Yeah.
Classic. Mine has always been so number one, chiropractic. I cannot abide chiropractors. And then the other one is acupuncture, man. I don't know why, but acupuncture just gets me for some reason.
That's actually an interesting one, because the Army likes to use battlefield acupuncture, which is on the ear. But it's funny because some of the family medicine residents at the program I was just auditioning at, they all were practicing on each other, and they said it hurts really bad. And so it was funny because they're their thought was that, yeah, you're distracting them from the pain from their gunshot wound by the pain in their ear. So I mean, sure, it could work, but
it's acupuncture. But like, so is there supposed to be like different specific areas on your ear that do different
yeah.
things?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're supposed to do all the points every time. It's like 5 of them, but apparently, and you leave the things in your ears for like
Right.
a couple days, and they fall out on their own. But so
Days.
you're just constantly in pain. So yeah, if you're in chronic pain and you add more pain to distract your other pain, sure, I could see that, making you feel a little bit better.
That sounds kind of like, is it called acupressure? Is that the one that's like
Yeah.
on the foot, where it's like acupuncture, but or like this ear acupuncture thing, but instead of like
Yeah.
they map everything onto the bottom of the foot,
Mhm.
and then they use like a massager thing.
Oh
That's another
yeah. Yeah,
wild
I've
thing.
done a video on that one too. It's
Mm.
pretty hilarious because also and when I talked about this, I gave a little bit of a lecture on the nervous system and where the nerves exit from the spinal cord, because that matters. And how can you get uh pathways from the bottom of the foot if you're saying that this comes from like the stomach, when we know the stomach is at T5 through T9? How are you getting that input from the bottom of the foot? It just doesn't really work. So that's a
Yeah.
favorite of mine to talk about as well.
Well, like, so my cousin is a chiropractor and also has like a side hustle in traditional Chinese medicine / acupuncture. So she's like the anti-MD aware. But like, I remember having a discussion with her because I guess acupuncture, to my understanding, is all about like meridians and like facilitating the flow of energy through these meridians, and the needles are intended to like unblock these meridians. And I'm like, whoa, what is a meridian? Can I dissect out a meridian in the anatomy lab? Like, can I go and like, oh, look, here's this guy's meridian. Hey, look, it's like blocked. Oh, there's all this chi built up behind this blockage in his meridian. And it's like, there's no correlate in actual reality.
Yeah, the best I've heard for that is people trying to say that meridians were just a way to describe the nervous system, but that's even inconsistent because,
Yeah.
like I just mentioned, the nervous system follows specific pathways, and
Mhm.
the reflexology and the acupressure and acupuncture points do not relate
They
to
don't
what
map.
we know about the nervous system. So
Mhm.
that's debunked.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it just it gets me. I don't know why. But in preparation for this call, you and I both watched a certain film. We
Yeah.
watched Matt Walsh's "What Is a Woman," which I don't know. So, what's your review, Ben? Give us
Yeah.
a score out of 5 stars, and your like punchy newspaper review of this film.
Can I give negatives? Because I want to give it like a -4, because he calls it a documentary. It is obviously propaganda, and
Mhm.
even the way that he recruited people for this movie was despicable.
Mhm.
But he baited people essentially who were trans or gender affirming, and brought them on to honestly ask them the question of what is a woman, and clearly was not honest in his approach and just wanted to trash them,
Mhm.
and brought them on to trip them up with this, oh well, these people can't even answer the question of what is a woman. And I have to say this, like, as a review, and especially as a review from a trans person, you don't need to watch this movie. Especially if you are trans, you do not need to watch this movie. It is more dehumanizing and demoralizing than you need to put up with. So don't watch it.
Nobody
Don't
needs to
watch it.
watch this movie. Nobody
Nobody.
does. And I would like, it's fun to hate watch. I enjoyed hate watching it. but I also don't want to like support or encourage anyone else to help Matt Walsh profit off of this thing. So I don't know if you feel like hate watching it and you like to sail the seven seas, then that might be up your alley. If you catch my drift, yar. But there were a couple of points that we wanted to talk about specifically that came up in this film, right? So So there was one point where he was talking to was it a pediatric psychiatrist?
Yes.
Yes, who was talking about, and he was asking about the use of puberty blockers, and he was comparing it because he was saying the same drug is used for chemical castration in sex offenders in certain jurisdictions, and the same drug is used as a puberty blocker for trans care. And I know, Ben, that you have a particular soapbox, so I'm going to let you go on this one.
All right. So for the puberty blockers thing, there's a lot of misinformation surrounding this, and it's not a new medication. We use this for cases of precocious puberty in kids who are under 8 that go through puberty, and you, of course, don't want them to undergo this too early. So this is of course, it is used for things like prostate cancer as chemical castration, and for has been used in the past for felons, which that's a whole separate issue about whether or not that's appropriate to do. But the whole mechanism is as a GnRH agonist. So it actually increases hormone production in the brain to then cause more estrogen or testosterone to be produced, which then inhibits that same compound from being released. So it actually increases the amount of hormones and then stops it. So it is a pauser. It's not really a blocker, because once you stop puberty with this medication, as soon as if you take the medication away, they're going to go back to their puberty they were going to have. It might be a bit delayed compared to their peers, because if they had that period of pause, but they're not losing anything from starting a puberty blocker. And they try to say that these kids are getting a disadvantage in their puberty if they were to be taken off of this, but that's not what we see. And we would see that with cases of precocious puberty if that were the case. So the other thing is they like to talk about the risk of osteoporosis and say that you're causing all these side effects with Lupron, and that's true to an extent, with that if you use it beyond its approved time frame. So you're supposed to use it as a transition period for teens who don't know if they want to undergo hormone therapy. So you have the kid socially transition, they go through psychotherapy, and they see if they want to go through with cross-sex hormone therapy. And if they choose to go through with that, then you can use the puberty blocker to slowly add estrogen or testosterone so that they undergo their puberty at a rate consistent with their peers. Or you take away the puberty blocker entirely and they go back to their usual hormone production. So the only times you're going to get this osteoporosis is if you leave them on the puberty blocker longer than a 2-year period. And it shouldn't take that long anyway to get to HRT or to find out that you don't want to transition. So that's kind of an irrelevant point, because even in people that are staying on the puberty blockers for longer than 2 years, they've had the addition of HRT, and estrogen or testosterone is going to counteract the osteoporosis of the puberty blocker.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, when I heard this, it seemed like a poisoning of the well, if you know what I mean, because he's basically demonizing this particular drug, Lupron. But it completely misses the reality of the situation, which is that compounds are just compounds. They're not like ethically right or wrong. You know, it's like, don't forget that there's a lot of people walking around and they're taking pills of rat poison. Oh my God, rat poison. Yeah, it's called warfarin and it's a blood thinner. And if you take just the right amount of it, it'll prevent you from having a life-threatening blood clot. But if you take too much, then you'll bleed out, right? It's like there's a whole whack of drugs that exist and that we use in medicine, and we use them for very specific indications and at very specific doses and all of this sort of thing. And we do it because we've done the studies to make us sure that it's safe to do that. Just because you can use a drug to make someone overdose doesn't mean that it's bad, right? I mean, the other example that I use is like people are very afraid of oxycodone, fentanyl, hydromorphone, all of these opioids because they see it in the news. Meanwhile, like, can you imagine? So I'm like for those who don't know, my specialty is in surgery. Can you imagine doing surgery and not having? Can you imagine having surgery and not having access to opioids? Like, you'd be stuck with Tylenol and Advil for the most part, and they're, stronger correlates. But you can't demonize a drug just because it has some negative applications. And I mean, as you alluded to, Ben, I think the notion of using drugs as like a form of punishment is dubious on many fronts.
For sure.
We had some other thoughts. Did you want to talk about the opinions that they gave on surgery?
Yes. So they have in the movie a trans man who underwent phalloplasty, and this is a person that transitioned like in his 40s. He's 40, was 42 when he began transition. So he's talking about doing surgery on children, which that's a big thing too, is that we do not do genital surgeries on children. That's later. Only cases where you have congenital issues that actually impact someone's health. Those are cases that you'd operate, but that's for the health and safety of the child, not for a gender affirming procedure. So that's totally an irrelevant point, but they like to say that surgery is genital mutilation, and he shows off his scar on his arm from phalloplasty, which the reason why you take that piece of tissue out is for a graft. It's not a complication. It's an expected step of the surgery. You consented to having that tissue grafted. And so that gives you length to the neophallus. And so it's this scary, scary thing. But they forget to mention the more minor procedures that you can also do. Phalloplasty is probably the most extreme end of gender-affirming surgeries and the most risky. There's one called the metoidioplasty, where it's just releasing the clitoris from ligaments and just using the growth that you already had. And that doesn't require any grafts whatsoever. And that's a relatively safe procedure, but they don't mention that one. And they claim that phalloplasty has a statistic of 67% complication rate, which the highest statistic that I've found is 32.8% for urethral complications, specifically in urethral lengthening steps, which are not required for a phalloplasty. And then they like to
don't
say
exactly
that
cite their sources in this.
They don't.
In this
They don't.
documentary either.
And they seem to one person even said that everyone is pretty much funneled from as soon as they say that they're trans to hormones into surgery, which is not the case. There's still many barriers to anybody getting these steps in healthcare at all. Like getting hormones is even very difficult for a lot of people. But there are plenty of trans people who choose not to do any medical transition for whatever reason, whether it be cost, whether it be risks involved, especially with genital surgeries, with there being higher risks of complications just because you're having a major surgery. Some people don't want that, and that's fine. And they're not forced to get surgery. So that's a dishonest point that they make about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are just a few of our thoughts, but as we said, this is like a propaganda film, an anti-trans propaganda film. My biggest takeaway was that, as I think you alluded to, Ben, he's not asking this question honestly, and it's not a very good question, right? It's vague and overly reductive, and like in that sense, it's ultimately, I think, pretty vapid. Like, if someone asked me this question, I'd be like, well, what exactly do you mean? Because I don't really understand that question. Like, I don't really know what you're asking. And then your answer would vary depending on how they elaborated on it, right? Like, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I often use the idea that being a woman is related to the subjective experience of interacting with society as a female. So it sounds very circular, but it's kind of it is subjective based on your own experience and based on how you want society to treat you. Do you want society to use certain pronouns for you? Do you want society to see you in a certain way? And that's ultimately what it comes down to. And also, how do I want to see my own body? What organs do I think I should have? What organs do I not want to have? And that it's subjective, but it's funny that Matt Walsh frowns upon the subjective experience, saying that all of this should come down to objectivity, but you can't even do that because he culturally cherry-picked people that agreed with him. But you ask any cis person, and most of them can't agree on what being a man or a woman means to them. It's ultimately subjective for them too. So I would love to, if I sat in a room across from Matt Walsh, I would ask him, what makes you a man? And then watch him flounder, because I doubt that he could say it, because you go down this pathway of what makes you a man? Well, I have a penis. Okay, well, so does removing that, if you had an accident where you don't have a penis, are you no longer a man? And most people, of course, would say no, that doesn't mean I'm not a man anymore. Okay, so there's something else to it. There's something else beyond your biology that makes you what gender you are. So he's definitely not honest in his approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we love to have this discussion. So if you want to get in on it, feel free to call in. We've got a few calls on the line. We'll get to those very shortly. But before we do, we need to show some appreciation to our patron of the week, someone who donates to Truth Wanted through our Patreon at tiny.cc/PatreonTW. As a special bonus one I'm hosting, I will bestow an exclusive custom patron sainthood to our patron of the week. And this week's patron saint is iHeartDogs. iHeartDogs, I hereby bestow upon you the apt title of patron saint of puppies. So congratulations, iHeartDogs. Big thanks to you and to all of our patrons from all of us here at Truth Wanted and the ACA. Ben, are you ready to get to some calls?
I am ready. Let's do it.
All right. We've got, first up, let's talk to Jamie in Texas. Him. He's calling because he is visiting a psychic eye surgeon. I have no idea what that is. Jamie, can you tell us what is a psychic eye surgeon?
Okay. So, hi, Jamie in Texas. You may have recognized me. I'm the weird English guy. I have been to a psychic eye surgeon. I'm not going to one. This was a good number of years ago. Now, I'm a skeptic, and I am a believer in science. My mother, however, is more spiritual, you might say. And we also, we're sort of a hippie-based family. So a lot of woo was bandied about, if not like religiosity, lots and lots of woo was bandied about the family, and all of our friends had thoughts and stuff. So here's the scenario. I have a congenital eye issue. It's actually part of a larger thing called Rubinstein-Taybi syndrome. I have a partial case of that, which has resulted in heavy myopia and bilateral macular coloboma, scars where my retinas should be, most of them anyway. And you may know that leaves you at a higher risk, now I know, of early onset vitreous detachment. The gooey bits inside your eyes comes apart and you get floaters, right? Happens to a lot of people. So in my early 20s, after a rather strenuous night of drinking with my friends, I was sitting alone, contemplating myself in a McDonald's bathroom, when suddenly what looked like a brown worm-like thing just appeared in my vision. And then over the next few hours spread to the other one. And I didn't know what it was. And I was a bit shook up about it. And then I went to see an optometrist provided through a charity in the UK. And the optometrist was extremely upset that I hadn't come and seen them sooner, and told me in no uncertain terms I was in high risk of retinal tearing, and it could ruin what vision I have permanently, and put like the absolute fear in me. And I started doing research. If you see any flashes or extra floaters or other distortions in your vision, you should treat it as a medical emergency, because retinal tearing, you have to get it seen too quickly. So I'm stressed. My mum is stressed. We get a second opinion from a private ophthalmologist who says, well, yeah, things look okay, I suppose, but they don't really give us any answers as to like, am I going to lose my vision or not? And they're like, well, just if anything changes, go to the hospital, which is never really a very gratifying thing to hear. And so my mum got desperate. She followed the advice of one of her friends, and one Saturday, I think it was, we got in the car and we drove to rural Wales to a house. We were greeted at the door by a man who, maybe I'm colouring my memory, was a bit of a wheeler dealer. And there was a rather nice new Range Rover, or Land Rover, out front of the house. And we were ushered in, and in exchange for 200 of our British pounds, an old man came into a dimly lit room with me and sat down and started to sort of mumble to himself. And then his accent changed to a sort of more plummy, posh voice, and he declared that he was a doctor, and he had come to look at my eyes. And
so was he like channeling someone? Is that the idea?
He was channeling an 18th century genius eye surgeon.
Interesting.
Ghost.
What?
And he gets right up in my face, and he's, yes, I see the problem. There are blockages. There are blockages behind your eyes. I will perform this. And he does like 5 minutes of waving his hands around in a vaguely sewing motion in front of my eyes. In the meantime, I'm just completely baffled. And then declares that I'm cured, and we pay our money and leave. Now,
and he didn't give you like ether or something ahead of time for the pain. It's very, that's violating the 18th century physician's code, I think.
I would have liked a nice bit of laudanum. That would have been nice. A little bit of opium, please, Holmes. That'd be very nice.
Seed of the poppy.
None of that. Yeah, don't need any anesthesia when it's all done through psychic manipulation. And it's such a bizarre episode in my life. I can bet, I'm like, did I dream that? Like, did I actually go to Wales and have a weird old man channel a quote unquote ghost to quote unquote do quote unquote surgery on my eyes? And it's like, okay.
And what did you think at the time?
It was complete nonsense. But my mum was so desperate to try anything. I didn't want to disappoint her. Now, she also promised herself and promised, I'll say God, but she doesn't really believe in the Judeo-Christian God anymore. But to the spirits that she believes in, she would quit smoking if my eyes didn't get worse. And they didn't. So she quit smoking and hasn't touched a cigarette in 20 years. And
silver lining. And
we laugh about it. We laugh about it now, but I wanted to tell this story to say just how bafflingly, obviously stupid some of these procedures are. People can still be taken in by them, and desperation will make people do very, very unwise things with their health. I could also tell you stories. I work for a major cancer charity here in the US now, and the heartbreaking stories of people calling in to try and get financial assistance to go for treatments that I know won't work. Oh, vitamin C infusions. I'm like, and I can't tell them, don't. It's a waste of your time.
Why can't you tell them?
And money. We are, we are bound to only. It's the whole, like, we can't disprove that they work. Like, there's no evidence they do, and we can say that if they ask. And we can also say there's no financial assistance for non-FDA approved treatments. We can say that, but we're not allowed to discourage them. It's ethics. Like, you can't tell people what to do with their own health, especially if you're not their doctor. Like, we're just a charity. We're there to help if we can. If they ask for, like, do we have any research on it, we'll tell them, no, there isn't any. Like, well, there's been research done and it all shows it's false. Take that as you will. But I'm personally screaming inside to see the desperation and knowing that I've kind of fallen for it myself. Personally, I didn't, but I didn't tell my mom no. I didn't say, forget it, Mom. That's a waste of money and time. I went along with it as much for her sake as anything else. I didn't think it would work.
Was there any indication of how this might work? Like how, like let's just say, for the sake of the discussion, that this guy did manage to channel an 18th century genius eye surgeon. How is the, like, waving his hands above your eye supposed to work? Was there any insight into this?
The vague explanation he gave me is that he could remove the blockages through manipulating the spirit or manipulating energy or something of that nature. It wasn't really explained that well. I will begin the procedure. Oh yes, there are blockages. I will now unblock them. Wave hands, vague sewing motions.
You probably had too much of the black bile humor or something like that, right?
He wasn't even that specific. I think what it actually was a chancer's granddad was delusional, probably had Alzheimer's or something of that nature, believed he could cure people, and the guy was just a good salesman and was conning people into paying money to be psychically healed. And of course, then you just got the placebo effect, the chance, like, yeah, my eyes didn't get any worse. I didn't have retinal tearing. I mean, I'm starting to develop cataracts now, but I'm almost 40. It's not that unusual, you know. And compared to the rest of my problems, it's very minor.
Well, I've looked into psychic surgery a little bit for my own debunks, and it's interesting. Quite a few people that practice this are really good magicians who they'll pretend to do the surgery. They'll wave their hands around, and then they start like showing like towels soaked in blood and things to make it look like they've done something inside your body, even though there's no evidence of where that came from. So sometimes they're using sleight of hand techniques to make it look like this is happening. So did anything like that happen? Did he do any
touch me at all? There was nothing of the sort. He came in, waved his hands.
Like Reiki.
I have performed the procedure, left, and we were charged our money, and we left, and it was just
goodness.
Weird.
Yeah, Ben, what you're saying reminds me of James Randi did like a debunk of psychic healers where he did the same sort of thing. Obviously, he wasn't like waving his hands like Reiki style, but he was doing the like psychic surgery where they like sort of press on you or whatever, and he would palm like chicken intestines or like some other like food intestine, and then he would like pull it out and be like, oh, that's not supposed to come out, and then he'd like put it back, palm it back in or whatever. Very entertaining. But like you can see, like to someone who is susceptible to believing that and who isn't as like keen-eyed, could totally get taken in by that, right?
Keen-eyed, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yes, and the thing is that when someone's desperate, they will fall for these things. Even intelligent people will fall for these things. We're all susceptible to it. And even if you're not particularly susceptible, you will sometimes go along with it like I did to just not rock the boat. I think that's what a lot of people in religion, unfortunately, are. They just don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to upset their parents or upset their friends or whatever. And there's always that, and it's the nagging problems. Like, this is what faith healing and religion do. It's like, we can keep you healthy, and we can stop, and we can take away the fear of death. And these are two that affect all of us.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. And like when I was in medical school, people would always ask, because I was like super anti alternative medicine and all this stuff. And people, when I brought this up, my classmates would always say like, oh, why are you making such a big deal? If it like helps them deal with their stuff, why don't you just let it go? I'm like, because they are wasting their money on this, and like someone is exploiting these patients. And like, if we don't do something to protect our patients from these like shysters, who's gonna do it, right? Like I think it's bad enough that at least in Canada, chiropractors can call themselves doctors legally. Naturopaths can. I think homeopaths might even be able to. And like, that's misleading enough. I know lots and lots of people who thought that chiropractors were a type of doctor, and they went to medical school just like everyone else. And of course, that's not the case, right? What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, and this is an interesting discussion point that I've had with multiple people about the placebo effect and whether or not it is ethical to utilize the placebo effect if somebody's getting benefit from it. And I personally think that this is a violation of our oath to do things to actually help people. I think if whether or not the placebo effect works for them, it's only a subjective treatment. It's not actually addressing the issue that they're coming to you for, and it violates transparency and consent. I think if you, because the placebo effect relies on you convincing them that it's going to work. It relies on them believing that it's working. So if you're not disclosing the fact that this thing doesn't work, then that's not getting consent for whatever it is you're doing. And I think that's, regardless of your credentials, I think that's not a good way to go, even if it does seemingly benefit somebody.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes, like, we have these discussions often. Sometimes you have to tell hard truths to people, to your patients, even though you want to make them feel better and you want them to be happy. Like, it's important to let people know that they have a terminal diagnosis, for instance, right? Rather than trying to protect them by withholding the truth. At least that's the way we think of it here. But that's very interesting
as well.
Yeah, exactly. Very interesting call and very interesting discussion, Jamie. Thanks for calling in. I want to move on now to a similar call. One-eyed heathen in Georgia. And one-eyed heathen wants to talk about Reiki. Why don't you fill us in?
Yeah, hi. I'm nervous because I'm basically calling in to say, hi, everyone. I was a great big fool, and I wasted hundreds of dollars becoming a, quote, Reiki master. And I mean, I'm laughing. It's silly, but it can actually do serious harm. And when I well and truly thought I was actually doing something for people, I wasn't being dishonest. I wasn't being bad. I wasn't even getting money for it. And with my friends and I in this whole Reiki circle, we were good people trying to do something good. We just had a really bad idea, and we were like, I believe that I was tricking myself, but we were playing off each other. And so I might say something like, yes, I would feel things. I might say, oh, I feel really cold, and I just saw a picture of, I don't know, a wilted flower or something. And then somebody would, or maybe the person on the table would be like, Oh, yeah. Last week I had some flowers that died and they were really ugly, but that's what got me to start cleaning my house and clear the bad energy out of my house. Yeah, okay. You know, it's very, very similar, if not identical, to cold reading. It's just more like, oh, hey, I feel like you're releasing a lot of negative energy, or I feel like, or I'm seeing a lump and I'm working on loosening this lump, and then somebody will be like, oh yeah, I also sense or feel this thing. So therefore, you know, they will find something to confirm it. Oh yeah.
So what do people come to you with? So you actually, like, you practiced Reiki? You would say practiced?
Yes, I did. Mostly it was we all practiced on each other, but the common complaints would have been like, I have a lot of back pain, because like, who doesn't have back pain? I have shoulder pain, neck pain, or I have chronic fatigue syndrome. A lot of autoimmune illnesses are not well understood, and a lot
stuff
of
that
people,
conventional medicine is not good at treating.
Right. So it's like, oh, I have an autoimmune disease. Fibromyalgia. You know, stuff that, you know, people still have problems with. Medical science can't just give you a pill and make it all go away. And like, or weird allergies. Like, if somebody had a weird allergy, the basic idea was like, okay, so you have some kind of karmic lesson or past life memory that you're hanging on to. Like,
and so how did you approach that? Like, what did you do? You like, did you have like a diagnostic thing that you did, or like, how do you Reiki? That's what I'm really asking. How do you Reiki?
Okay, so there is a process of imagining the symbols. There are certain Reiki symbols, like people recognize a Hoku Rei or Hanshaze Shonen. There are these various symbols that you imagine running up and down your spine. And like for me, I would then touch my palms and imagine them in my palms, because that would get me in the frame of mind of, I'm doing Reiki. And I really would feel like there was something inside me sort of coming out of my hands, if that makes sense. So maybe it was a tactile hallucination. I don't know, but I was tricking myself. And there was a time when I totally believed this, and I thought, well, the reason that medicine isn't embracing this, unfortunately, some insurance companies are today, but I was like, well, the reason medicine isn't embracing this is because Big Pharma has this big agenda to keep people sick so they can come and keep paying. And then I had a thought of like, do you know how much they make from a cure for cancer? They'd make money hand over fist.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Big Pharma's corrupt, but that doesn't necessitate some grand conspiracy. Like, I think the lack of, so the thing that really, really, really got me to not believe, even before I deconverted, is like, okay, there's nothing to show. What is key? Point to key. Well, okay, I can't point to.
This is what I was saying, right?
Yeah.
Point to the meridians.
But how? Okay, how can I measure key? Like, there are things like radio waves we can't see, right? But okay, how do we measure key? How
you can measure them.
Up?
I have a small question.
Sure.
Going back to your the beginning of your story, I'm curious, because you said that when you were practicing this on somebody, you had found a lump. What did you actually feel? Something like, if you were Reikiing another person, are there sensations that you'd find in that person and that would indicate something? Did you actually feel that in them?
As far as actually touching the person and actually like feeling a lump, say like in a breast or something, no. But I'm very like, it's really easy for me to work myself into an altered state. So I really think that I was having tactile hallucinations, as well as just having this idea, oh, I feel like you have a lump here. And I might say something like, hey, you might go to the doctor and have this checked out because I feel like you got a problem here. And that was just, intuition. Now, did anyone go to a doctor and then come back and say, oh, you were right? No.
Did anyone go to a doctor and come back and say, oh, you were wrong?
No. I kind of wish they had.
No feedback. Yeah.
No.
That's very so
no, but
how did you get out of it then?
So, but it was it wasn't like a cult, like I had to escape. I just realized, what is key? How are we measuring key? What is the difference between somebody who has been Reiki'd and somebody who has not been Reiki'd? The initial difference is they get up feeling calm and feeling I would feel better. I have chronic pain. I would feel better initially and feel relaxed. A lot of times, a lot of us would like cry or laugh when we were on the table. So it would be cathartic. We would have pent up emotions and release them. And for some people, it was like, well, I had childhood baggage that I was angry about and I never told anyone. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, it really would have been more helpful if all of us did therapy or something.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing, but
I mean, I think you hit it.
But it could
One-eyed heathen. Like, honestly, I think a lot of the benefit that people get from going to a naturopath or a homeopath or a psychic or whatever is really just having someone to talk to who will listen to their problems, maybe having a place to like lie down quietly for an hour at a time, and not have to worry about whatever it is, not be distracted by their phone or their kids or their spouse or whatever it is, right? Or their job.
Right. Right.
So I think you nailed it.
Wake up. Yeah, and if you wake up, someone's going to be saying something encouraging, and you're allowed to go ahead and cry if you need to cry. You relax. It's good. And
breaking news. You feel refreshed after you've had a nap.
Yes.
Like, no kidding.
Yeah, like a lot of people would sleep on the table, and you're just like, okay, they need sleep. Okay, cool. And of course, sleep is recuperative. But I spent hundreds of fucking dollars on this, and I feel like, I feel like a complete fool. But also, I was just being human, and I was fooled, and I was helping to fool other people. So I feel a little bit guilty.
But I mean, I think like now you have the opportunity to, turn it around, and you're like the person on the inside, right? It's like I was thinking about it just today, how cool it would be to go through like naturopathic or chiropractic or homeopathic training. Be like, look, I can tell you from the inside that it's BS. Now you're the person who can tell us from the inside that Reiki is BS. So I think you've got like a very unique opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that, like if somebody was coming to me and saying like, oh, hey, I found this really good Reiki practitioner, you should, I don't know, check her out or something, I could be like, well, let me tell you my experience about Reiki. Or I could ask the questions that got me, like, what is the difference between medicine and alternative medicine? And if they want to go down the conspiracy route, I would ask questions like, okay, so if this knowledge is super, super secret, how is it then you know it? Okay, so you did your own research. Okay, so from where did you get your research? Like, what is their stake in it? And then, I was finding out, from these conspiracy people, their stake in it is they get money from selling books and supplements and Reiki treatments and classes,
courses,
viewing,
classes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, very interesting. One-eyed heathen. We got to move on, but Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I find it very interesting. And another little layer to this is that I know a lot of Reiki practitioners will use their hands, and human touch is very powerful for release of neurotransmitters. So I don't doubt that having a relaxing time on a bed with some human interaction, that I think a lot of us are physical touch starved almost. We don't have a lot of that in our culture, so it's and especially with people being isolated so recently, I think that's potentially another reason why people are feeling so relaxed after these treatments. But I agree in that your experience with going through this is kind of a benefit to the rest of us, learning about what you went through to get that certification and what it's been like, because yeah, the rest of us wouldn't know exactly apart from what they're advertising. So I think even though you might feel bad about going through that, I think it is more of a benefit than you realize.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, One-Eyed Heathen, for your call. And thanks for everyone who's called in so far. We've got a couple more calls to get to, but if you're enjoying Truth Wanted, you might be interested to hear that there are a bunch of other shows that we already alluded to that are produced by the ACA that you can check out, including the Nonprofits, Secular Sexuality, Talk Heathen, and of course the Atheist Experience. Here is a sneak peek of what happened on the ACA last week, in case you missed it.
I'm stuck on this image of Jason emerging from his bedroom after discovering gay porn for the first time, letting himself watch it with a forearm like Popeye and an avalanche of Kleenex coming out from behind him.
Like I said, based on this list, you are currently experiencing oppression.
I am super demonically oppressed.
Step in the right direction. Step in the right direction, baby. Step in the right direction. Oh, we're step in the right direction.
There's that, Dilla Huzza something, that guy. He's talked about this before. I've heard him where he says, if I order a steak at a restaurant and then they bring me the steak, that's not a prophecy.
If you ask any reasonable person, is there ever a time when it's okay to own a person's property, and their answer is anything other than absolutely no, why the you asked me something like that? That person is an immoral piece of and they need to reevaluate their life.
I like to give rope. Have some rope. I like to push rope.
Everybody, welcome back. Before we get to our calls, we've got a couple of special announcements. First of all, this holiday season, the hosts of your favorite ACA shows will be going head-to-head in a team contest that will have you in stitches. And I'm a surgeon, so I can say that. But we need help from our community. Visit tiny.cc/ACA Holiday Survey 2022. Answer as many questions as you can and be part of the mayhem. We need your participation. So as a special reward for helping out, we'll be selecting some respondents at random and sending them a special gift. Click that link to get in on the action and watch the hosts of your favorite ACA show duke it out this December. Also, on September 25th, if you are in Austin or can make plans to be in Austin, consider joining us in the studio audience at the ACA Free Thought Library for live broadcasts of Talk Heathen at 1 p.m. and the Atheist Experience at 4:30 p.m. Doors open at noon, and parking is where you can find a legal spot after the lot is full. If you can't make it there this month, we are going to continue to broadcast from the library on the last Sunday of every month, so keep watching this show and our website, atheist-community.org, for news and information as we expand our in-studio offerings in the near future. And with that, Ben, are you ready to get back into it?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right, great. We've got Gerard from Wisconsin, he, him, who's got some questions about morality and objectivity, I'll say. Gerard, do you want to clarify what you're asking here?
Yeah. So it's just been something I've been like thinking about lately. Because like in a lot of these calls, especially when it comes to morality, like the big kicker is like, oh, you don't have some objective morality system. And I've just been tossing around ideas. And one of the things is like, what if we define, because like, I mean, definitions are important. And what if we define morality as value? Because a lot of like moral decisions, that's what I feel it comes down to. Like,
what do you mean by value?
I'm getting to that. On
Okay.
the topic of abortion, what do you value more? Do you value the bodily autonomy of individuals with a particular organ, or do you value the potential life form that is being created? Like, which one do you value more? And so if we can agree, like, because once we have determined, like, okay, I value this proposition more than that proposition, there's some hypothetical optimal course of action you can take.
I get what you're saying, but I guess my question would be the same, is what do you mean by value, right? Like, so to me, when you're saying this, there's some implicit, you're sort of assuming that there is like something that makes option A more valuable than option B. And I guess my question is, what do you suppose that is? What are you proposing that is? Because, it's not clear to me.
Yeah, well, in a lot of the conversations, like they throw terms like well-being, happiness, and health, and I think if we just like bypass that and go like just drill down to like, okay, what do you value? Do you value a society where you don't have the government telling you what you can and can't put in your body? Okay, well then if you do value that, then you can vote certain ways and you can determine to a rough, like, there's going to be some wiggle room and some gray areas, but you can determine like, okay, well, if we support this person who is like for abortion and we don't support the person who's not, it's like, that's clearly one option is better, objectively better than the other towards getting that value target.
So hold on though. Like with this, I still fail to see how we've moved beyond subjectivity into objectivity, because now all we've done is we've taken something subjective and we've just given it more subjective parameters and just labeled it as this is subjectively what is moral to you. So I'm not quite sure how this is moving forward in the discussion. Maybe you can clarify a bit more.
Yeah, no, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to call in, because like it's just something I'm working on recently. So say, get really like abstract, like say you value the continuation of the human race. There exists some hypothetical like series of actions we can take as a species to move towards that goal. But there are also actions that we can take that will objectively move us away from that goal. And so it's kind of taken the whole...
But I think the disagreement... But the disagreement that I think people have in these sort of discussions is not... like... the disagreement is what the goal is, right? No one is really arguing that like, oh, some things, like some actions get you closer to some goal than others. Like I think everyone would sort of agree to that. And in that sense, option A might be more valuable than option B because option A gets you closer to whatever your goal is. The thing that people argue about is what the goal is, right? And that's the thing that like causes moral disagreements. So how does spinning this in terms of like value solve that problem, or maybe you're not trying to solve that problem.
Because, like, if you, so irrespective of your personal opinion on how you get to, hold on, let me start over again. Because I know what you're talking about, and this is kind of like what I'm thinking around, is trying to circumvent that like, oh, well, I value different things. It's like, yeah, that's fine, but if we both value like a functioning, supportive government, irrespective of our feelings, like we can be left, right, irrespective of our feelings, there exists in this hypothetical abstract existence, like not literal existence, but there's a hypothetical ideal set of circumstances and actions that we can objectively take that will objectively get us closer to that ultimate goal, the ultimate value of a better government.
So that, assuming that we have the same goal, we have to enter with that assumption then, because if we can't agree on the goal, sure, the steps to getting to a certain goal may be objective, but we still haven't moved into why we would all agree on the goal. So I think that's where we're both coming from.
Yeah, you're sort of like, you're saying, if we agree that X, Y, Z, but a lot of people don't agree on that, right? That's the whole point. So like, if you're talking about the abortion debate, some people would say, I think it's like, if we agree that we want people to be able to decide what to do with their bodies, some people go, whoa, I don't necessarily agree to that. I agree to that within like certain parameters, right? And maybe for some people, those parameters include you can't have an abortion under any circumstance. So I don't really see how this gets us past moral disagreements. Is there a way that like what does like framing it as a value change?
Because in my opinion, it kind of circumvents a lot of the things that I hear a lot of like religious people say. For example, like there was one conversation I remember a while back. Roughly, it was, I think it was Matt saying something like, "We value," or hold on, brain fart. My brain just reset.
Yeah, no problem. Like, so let me ask you then, Gerard, is this a means versus ends question? Like, you're saying that you think that people would agree to like the goal, but they don't necessarily agree on the means of getting to that goal? And you're saying that like, well, if we look at it as values, then we can circumvent this question of like, are we doing bad things for good reasons, sort of thing? Like, is that what you're going for?
Not necessarily, because I'm fairly confident the whole ends justify the means is not a morally good thing. Because, you know, like the truth has no fear of inspection. So if your cause is just, then if you have to utilize underhanded tactics, then, well, I mean, either A, you're in an oppressive government, or B, maybe your ideals aren't as pure as you thought they were, if you're willing to, like, say, sacrifice people for the cause.
I mean, I don't know. Like, my personal opinion, like, I'm kind of a utilitarian in a lot of senses, and in that I sort of agree with a ends justify the means, you know, just to a certain degree. I don't know, Ben, what's your take on this? What do you think?
This is a rough one. It's still all very subjective.
Yeah.
And it's I would agree with being more utilitarian in the sense that, I mean, for what we do, there are times when as a physician or as a surgeon, you have to harm somebody for a better outcome. Like surgery is not a comfortable thing, but sometimes it is necessary to do greater good. But again, it doesn't define what that good is, and that might be different for different people. So it's just I'm still having trouble with how subjective it still is.
Yeah, it
So, and I
seems to
don't
me
know
the
if we're gonna
problem
move
is
past that.
it seems to me the problem is that we're having trouble getting people agree to what they should value in the first place. Once they agree to value the same thing, then we don't have a disagreement, but that also doesn't make it objective, I would say.
Okay.
You can take,
I mean, it's
as you I think are alluding to, then you can take objectively correct steps towards achieving that end, right? Maybe that's what you're going for.
Yeah. Maybe.
But I
it's just
but I don't. Yeah, go ahead, Gerard.
It's just like this. It's the thing that I've been kind of like exploring, like this hypothetical, objective kind of goal, or not goal. Guide, step by step process. Like chess is used a lot. I'm trying to like. I'm just trying to bypass some of the language, but let's set that aside. How do you feel about me defining morality as like kind of value? Like, is that off, or how do you feel about that?
Ben, what do you think?
Like, I feel like a lot of the times when we're talking about morality, we're talking about like what we value, like human flourishing, bodily autonomy. Like, we value these things and we don't value the opposite.
Well, I don't necessarily have a problem with saying that value is a component of someone's subjective morality, but again, that is going to be something subjective. So if we as a group subjectively say that we value people being alive for a longer period of time, we could agree on certain things being moral or ethical, but that relies on us agreeing on those terms. And I do think if you're using it in that sense, I don't quite see a problem with it. However, I don't quite see the utility in switching the language from moral to value. I think they're along the same concept, but I do wonder if there are cases when using value like that could be problematic in terms of especially thinking back to ICU capacity during COVID. We ran into this issue with value being thrown around as who gets a ventilator being what value do they bring to society. And I think there are points when value can be a good metric for us to start agreeing on things, but it can also be problematic because once we start assigning specific value levels to things, we can actually do more harm in different ways. And I don't know what you think about that idea.
Well, let's talk about like what you said, like health. So if we value health, there are objectively things that we can do that will move us towards better health and away from worse health. But
which sounds great when there isn't conflict, right? It's great when we have full availability of resources and full availability of treatments for people to where it's unanimous. Yes, this is the best way to go forward. But with something where we had a conflict of we have two options for this person and they're both awful. This one might be marginally better in this way, maybe cost or reduced risk of complications. And this other one might have some disadvantage in those ways, but an advantage in a separate way. So when there's conflict, and both can get you to the same level of health, how then, if we're using just value, how then do we decide between that conflict?
Well, I would imagine like basically it'd just be nested values, like values within values. It's like, okay, we're valuing health. Okay, we've come across this roadblock. Now we have two choices. We can either like do something that's going to be prohibitively expensive, or we can do like just enough. They're going to be miserable. And like at that point, yeah, it's kind of a gray area, but like you could objectively still like, okay, this is going to be prohibitively expensive, but this is going to be better for their health. So in that regard, in the value of better health, this is the better one.
But let's say they both led to equal health outcomes. Let's say they both led to equal health outcomes. Then how do we decide between the options?
Well, then we go down to the next nested value within that. Like, okay, we have two options. One's prohibitively expensive, and the other one, I don't know. Maybe it's new. Maybe it's risky. Like there might be some side effects, not necessarily like deleterious side effects.
Yeah. So this
like
would still be, if let's say we present a patient with these two options and say your benefit is going to be the same with both of them. It's still going to be a subjective decision, like on their part, what the best option is, right? They're subjectively going to decide this one's better versus this one, but somebody else might say, no, this other one's better because of this reason. So we're still subjective here.
Well, yeah, but it's like the nested value. It's like, okay, we basically, okay, these two options are equal. So like there's no really better option, and so we move down or up. I don't know like what the correct terminology
what I think you're saying is like, well, if your outcomes are the same, then you would go down to like, what are the person's preferences with respect to this other outcome or this other end goal or something like that. I just don't think that it helps.
Yeah.
And I think that like so what it seems to me that you're doing is you're trying to take the right and wrong out of morality, or you're trying to make it more like a calculus, like something you can do like, oh yes, well, like, I don't know if you've seen the show The Good Place, but where it's like, oh yes, like mowing the lawn for your elderly neighbor, that's like plus 50 points. That's like the value associated with that action. And like, oh, you were mean to this person, so that's negative 25 points. And that's the value. I don't know, like, I understand, again, as like a utilitarian, I understand the attraction of doing that like moral calculus and being like, I can figure out the answer to every question as long as we have like a like anchored goal. You can find out like the like how good an action is, or how or which action is the best action. If we have enough knowledge and we know what our end goal is, you can like calculate it like math. And I find that very attractive as well. And I think that's what you're getting at. But I also think that it takes the like, it sort of takes the
substitute good moral or more moral for more valuable.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I get it, but I think it also takes out the connotation, and maybe this is your intention, is it takes out the connotation of morality being associated with like right and wrong in a philosophical sense. Is that what you're going for? Like you're saying,
like,
it's like you're saying instead of it being morally right, you would say it has a positive value of X units.
Yeah, but why is something morally right? Generally because it has
right. Well, this is the question, right? Like
yeah.
I think that what we've been saying is you have to define what it is your goal is, right? And your system of redefining morality as value doesn't get us past that hurdle. You can only calculate the value of an action with respect to a goal that you define ahead of time. Right?
Yeah, but no, and it is, but like I feel like it's the same though. Like when you boil it down to like what morality is, like what I'm trying to get at is like morality. When you boil it down, is like what do you value? Do you value your religion?
So okay,
like, take littering.
So there you go.
Littering.
So you're using value to represent two different things, right? You're using value as both the like measure of progress towards a goal, and you're using value in the traditional sense of like, what are your values? What are your goals? What do you think is the right thing to do, right? I think you've got an equivocation fallacy going on. I think that's maybe the issue. And I think this would be this would be more obvious to you if you had a discussion with someone who you disagree with, and try this out with them and see if you can, and see where you come up against a wall in that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you both agree, if you both have the same values at base, then you should be able to convince them of your opinion or whatever using your system. And if not, then you're going to find out where it is that they differ. And it's probably going to be that they don't agree with your objective, your goal, and they have different values.
Remind me, what's an equivocation fallacy again?
It's using the same word to mean two different things.
Okay, that's what I thought it was. See, I'm not necessarily convinced I'm doing that right now.
It's like, for instance,
I could be. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was saying, for instance, like I could say that I value my health, but also like I value my computer, and those are different things, right? I'm using value in one sense to mean like my computer is worth some amount of money, it's valuable, and then maybe this is a bad example, but I'm also I value my health because it is a sort of like fundamental thing that allows me to do the things that I want to do. But I'm still using it in slightly different ways, right?
Well, not necessarily, because I mean, there's value, monetary value, but like you can value your computer and it can still contribute to your health, because like you can use it to communicate with doctors.
Sure, but again, in this context, I'm talking about specifically, like I could say like my money is valuable. The money in my pocket is valuable, right? It's like it's not valuable in the same sense. But anyway, I don't know, Ben. What do you got? You got anything else on this?
No, I think we've kind of reached as far as we can really go with this conversation. I think that advice is great, and definitely call back in if you've tried this out and have some new thoughts on it, because I'd love to hear where this goes. Yeah,
thanks, Gerard. Really good topic. So thanks for calling in. All right, we've got time for one more call. She's been waiting on the line for like an hour and a half. So let's talk to Jasmine in Canada, who wants to talk about COVID vaccine ties into religion, politics, and society. So, a nice tight question.
Yes.
What do you want to talk about, Jasmine?
Well, I was listening to the previous callers, and I think one of the big threads through all that is fear. Like a lot of the people who propagate COVID misinformation are actually from the alternative health fields, to tell you the truth. Right. Like, I don't know if you two have heard of a Rashid Buddar.
No,
at all?
Not.
Nope.
Okay, he's an osteopath that's been spreading COVID misinformation for like a long time. He calls himself Dr. Butter, Butar, or whatever, however you say his name, but he's just an osteopath, and you should see you should hear
from where, may I ask? Says. From where, may I ask?
Somewhere in the U.S. I can actually pull up.
So osteopaths in the U.S. are Yeah, osteopaths in the US are equivalent to MDs in the US. So I want to clarify that.
Oh, okay. I don't think they're not quite equivalent here, but I guess I wouldn't know in the U.S. Anyway,
because I'm
yeah,
actually in a DO program, so
like,
if he's a DO, it's the same degree. Yeah, in the US, it's the same thing.
Oh, okay. In Canada, it's not, or at least as far as I know. But yeah, he's saying like the COVID vaccine has Marburg, Ebola, E. coli, and that everybody who has a COVID vaccine has these quote unquote sleeper cells in them, and that everybody eventually that had the COVID vaccine or multiples there die, will in his world will die a most miserable death. And he goes on all the religious talk shows. He's been on many shows, but it's all misinformation. CNN did a piece on him, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's such a great doctor." Oh, da, 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 da. You listen to it like 5 minutes, and you know he's full of shit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a DO specific thing. There's like all sorts of people from every profession who are spewing anti-vax COVID BS.
Well,
right? Like
there are some MDs and some well-educated people, but it's mostly, I think, coming from the alternative sectors and the lay people. I don't think there's...
I agree.
Except for maybe a few that might... But, yeah, he's even been kicked from one of his professional bodies for apparently something equivalent to injecting bleach into the kids. He had some professional misconduct that got his license taken away for a time.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that happens, right? Like, it doesn't matter necessarily what your degree is. If you act poorly, they will take it away. If you don't act in, appropriately. But what did you want to what did you want to talk about specifically?
Well, I want to talk about COVID vaccines, how the misinformation compares from one country to another, and how we handled it from one country to another, and how most of the COVID vaccine misinformation seems to be coming from the Christian right.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
Well, I actually have 2 studies that link it to the I believe they're from the U.S., but I have two studies here linking it to Christian nationalism, white Christian identity. Let me look here. But basically, it's linking it to the republic, the right, the Christian identity, and or correlating it to those things. And just from what I'm reading and what I'm seeing, that seems to be the case in both Canada and the U.S. It's linked to the more so the right, but also the Christian identity.
And what does that mean to you? What do you think of that?
Well, I wonder what it says with regards to how the religious people perceive or the religious public perceive things, is say how opposed to the educated or the atheist people see things. I'm wondering if we're not more prone to believing in woo, as you guys call it.
I mean, I think that there is so my personal opinion is that I think that the religious right has an anti-vax component that is largely conspiracy minded and distrustful of institutions, and I think that politically aligns with the right. They're distrustful of government and large organizations and things like that. And I think that's correlated with Christianity. But I also think on the other side of the spectrum, there's a lot of like wooey left-wing people, like hippie liberals, who, think that if it's natural, it's good, and vaccines are unnatural, and, you should just go out and live in the sun or eat this plant or whatever. So, I mean, I don't disagree that you can find, correlations between anti-vax sentiment in the Christian right. I think that you can. I think you could also find it in the, atheist, liberal, vaguely spiritual, perhaps left, those hippie groups. Like frankly, it's like a bell curve, right? It's like most people fall in the middle where they don't have any, non-mainstream beliefs about this stuff. But on the fringes, you get people who are distrustful, and they fringe on both sides of the political spectrum.
Well,
what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I can't deny I've seen. Ben.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ben.
I think that this is largely an issue related to thought process and how people think about certain problems. I think oftentimes we relate these anti-vax sentiments and other alternative medicine ideas with religion, because I mean, and you'll see this on the atheist side too, because you can get to a what we would consider to be the right answer of we are not convinced that there's a deity, but you can arrive at that conclusion for bad reasons and poor reasoning. So that being said, it's more likely that if you're using poor reasoning for a supernatural claim, that you would also use similar reasoning for a medical claim. But that being said, if somebody was an atheist that used poor reasoning to get to atheism, then they might also be susceptible to use poor reasoning in other circles. So I think that's kind of why, if there's any correlation, that would be my guess. But again, we can't really take a correlation and then say that this is the cause of X happening.
No.
But that would be my hypothesis there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it, Ben. It's probably that the common thread is actually that there's poor reasoning going on at some point, and that poor reasoning can lead people to different opinions on like politics, for instance, or religiosity, probably based on their upbringing or their circumstance or whatever. But the fact that they, we like to think that reality is our anchor, and we interpret reality with our ability to reason, and that is what anchors us to like what is typically mainstream beliefs, and it keeps us from being blown into like conspiracy theory territory, whereas people who don't have that anchor, or their chain that connects the anchor to their ship in this metaphor is the reasoning. If that is missing, then they can get blown away somewhere, right? Like that's the way I'm sort of interpreting this. What do you think, Jasmine?
Well, I mean, both of your points are valid, but can we discuss another case I came across?
Sure.
MD, have you heard of Romana Didulo, Queen of Canada?
Yeah, I've heard of the Queen of Canada.
Yeah. Did you want to discuss her and her anti-vax and all that?
I mean, the only thing remarkable about her is that she declared herself Queen of Canada. Otherwise, like, she'd be just another, fringe anti-vaxxer / whatever else, right? She's got a lot of like wicked beliefs. She'd be an interesting person to talk about. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about her off the top of my head to have like a fulsome discussion of her various beliefs. Hey, maybe we should try to get her as a guest on the show. But I don't know, Ben, have you heard of this person?
I have not.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. Jasmine, what do you know about her?
Well, she's anti-vax. She has religious ties. Obviously, she claims she's the Queen of Canada. Very big in conspiracy theories. I think she believes she's part alien or some type of alien. And like I said, there's definitely religious ties. I think her kingdom, she calls it the Kingdom of Canada, and sort of a lot of religious rhetoric too. So she's kind of got a little bit of everything. You want conspiracy theories? Go to her. You want?
Yeah, I think recently she issued like a warrant to her followers to arrest all police officers or something like that. And so a whole bunch of people tried to do like citizens arrests on police officers, and like they themselves then got arrested.
Yep.
So that was fun. That was a
why they
fun
think
news
she's
cycle.
mighty. Yeah, they think. Yeah, the interesting things we got up here. we sometimes our stuff makes the U.S. stuff make it look tame, but I don't know. But yeah, she's got it all. But do you think she's like? Do you think we'll just see something like her again and again and again? We see this anti-vax, this religious, this conspiracy.
I mean, there have been anti-vaxxers since vaccines were invented, right? Like, I don't know if we'll see another person claiming to be the Queen of Canada, but there's always going to be people on, like, anytime a major point of division comes up, there's going to be people on all sides, and there's going to be people on the fringes of literally everything. That's fine. It's what this show is based on, right? So we can't hold too much ire towards them as long as they're not doing a lot of harm. And I think she's relatively harmless. I don't know. I think the vaccine uptake in Canada is pretty good, relatively speaking.
Better than the U.S.
I'm sorry. I disagree. I do not like anybody who's anti-vax. I had somebody who I knew died of COVID, so I'm not a fan of anybody who's anti-vax.
You're not a fan of what?
Initially, what brought me to anti-vax people.
Oh, I'm not a fan of anti-vax people. I'm just saying that they're like, if vaccines exist, then anti-vax people will exist, and that's like I'm skeptical of like, I don't think that we will ever be rid of anti-vaxxers. As long as vaccines exist, I think there will be people who are against them, and I think we gotta, like, I'm still going to tell my patients to get vaccinated, and I'm still going to get all my vaccines, and I'm still going to advocate for vaccination, but I don't like think that it's a realistic expectation that we will one day do away with all anti-vaxxers. Just like I don't think there will ever be a time when there are no religious people, right? Like, there's gonna, no matter how much we do these shows and whatever, there's always going to be some religious people somewhere. We just got to work on getting that number to be as small as possible.
What do you think is worse, or what do you think the ties between the religious and the anti-vax? Like, how do we, if we're trying to mitigate the problems with religion and anti-vax and all that, how do we go about that?
Education. I think education's the big factor. Teaching people how to evaluate truth claims, like what we're doing on this show and all the other HCA shows. And because if you're using poor reasoning to get to any claims, you can get to any number of conspiracy claims through that. So if we can correct the thought process, then we can encourage people to take correct approaches to every area of their lives. Are we going to be able to reach everybody? No. But with the people that we can, they can use techniques on their friends, say, hey, I noticed like you have this conspiratorial view. What makes you think that? And of course, not in those words. You handle it a bit more gently, but
more tactfully.
But we, through encouraging things in policy as well as like education, like saying people need education in schools, encouraging critical thinking. Those are things that we can do. So I don't think that we're just letting people believe this stuff, but at the same time, I think that's the primary way we're going to combat any of it.
All right, Jasmine, final word.
Okay, so what? Okay, how do we prevent anti-vax cults, anti-medicine cults from popping up continuously?
What do you think?
Well, you said education. Anything else? Anything maybe along the emotional side we can do, or the societal side, or even, I don't know, philosophically, maybe a thought?
What do you think? What would you do if you were the Queen of Canada?
I think we're discussing. Tax the hell out of everybody and get a revolution started.
Against the Queen? Against yourself?
Join
You're
the
the Queen
US,
of Canada. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough question.
Well, no, I have to depose Romano.
Yeah, it's a tough question.
Maybe it's too broad of a question to answer singly.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's
angles, multiple.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so sorry, Jasmine. We have to wrap up the show. We are over time. But thanks for your call. Very thought-provoking, and feel free to call back in the future. It's always a stimulating conversation when you call in. As I said, unfortunately, we're completely out of time for this week. But before we go, I'd like to give a big thank you to my guest this week, student Dr. Ben. Where can people find you if they want to see more of you?
Yeah, well, this Sunday I will be hosting Talk Heathen. So that's the next place that you can find me on Sundays. We're going to have a great time, take some more calls. So if you liked the way I answered any of these questions today, you have other places that you can call in and ask more.
Very cool. If you would like to keep the conversation going, you can join us. Oh, no, sorry. You can tweet at me at EMDEE aware, AWARE. That's MD aware, but spelled out. If you want to follow up on anything from the show or chat about what we talked about, you can check out our fan run Facebook group at tiny.cc/FBTWG for more discussions and news about the show. If you prefer to engage with the ACA shows asynchronously, you can find audio-only episodes at tiny.cc/AEN podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Truth One is there, Talk Heathen's there, AXP, all your favorites. If you like what you heard today and you want to support us, you can do that on Patreon at tiny.cc/Patreon. You can buy some of our merch. We've got some pretty good merch at tiny.cc/merchaca. We've got a cool lizard people themed shirt this week. Maybe our next one should be a Queen of Canada shirt. Oh, that might be fun. Or maybe King of Canada. One of maybe objectively Dan could be the King of Canada. Wonder if he'd like that. You could also become a YouTube member by clicking the join button right under this video on YouTube. I think there's also an Amazon affiliate link or something like that. You can buy something on Amazon and yeah, Amazon Smile. There you go. Do those things and support us. But most importantly, none of this would be possible without the hard work of the ACA crew. Can we take a look at the crew cam? Are they still around? There they are. Thank you. Greg is disapprovingly glaring at us. Okay. Thanks, you guys. You make the show possible. That's all for now from Truth Wanted, but we'll catch you live on YouTube next Friday, 7 p.m. Central. I'm your host, MD Ware, and remember, keep wanting the truth.
Watch The Non-Prophets and join the hosts in the live chat Sundays at 3 p.m. Central between the Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.